Welcome to another episode of Over My Dead Body, and a very special one at that. I'm Stephen Kunis, and today we'll be speaking with the man for whom the word legend was created, newscaster extraordinaire Walter Cronkite. For those of our viewers who may have just arrived from another planet, Walter Cronkite was the anchorman for the CBS Evening News for 19 years and was often cited as the most trusted man in America. This is a far cry from how journalists are described today. Cronkite reported many events between 1937 and 1981, including World War II, the Nuremberg trials, combat in the Vietnam War, Watergate, the Iran hostage crisis, and the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, civil rights pioneer Martin Luther King Jr., and Beatles musician John Lennon. He was also known for his extensive coverage of the U.S. space program, from Project Mercury to the moon landings to the space shuttle. In fact, he was the only non-NASA recipient of the Ambassador of Exploration Award. Most of all, Cronkite was well known for his departing catchphrase, "And that's the way it is," at the end of each broadcast. I couldn't possibly be more excited to welcome today's guest, live from Mount Moriah Cemetery in Kansas City, Missouri, Mr. Walter Cronkite.
You left out the Emmy and Peabody Awards.
And humble as well.
But thank you, sir. Thank you.
And your timing is perfect. For the last several years, all we've heard is the term fake news bandied about, and the public outcry, "Where's Walter Cronkite when we need him?"
Well, I'm 6 feet underground in Kansas City, and bored out of my freaking skull, so I can't thank you enough for inviting me on your show.
It's our pleasure. First of all, for the younger members in our audience who may not know about you, would you mind sharing a bit of your background?
Not at all. I was born on November 4th, 1916 in St. Louis, Missouri, not far from where I'm buried now. My mother was Helen, and my father was Walter, a dentist.
Did he want you to follow in his footsteps?
Oh, of course. But looking in people's mouths and smelling bad breath wasn't my thing. Or having them fart in their chair while getting a filling. Yes, I'm funny that way.
So you were named after your dad?
And nothing gets past you, eh? Actually, my dad was Dutch, and our name was Cronkite. Thank God my grandfather changed it.
And you grew up in Missouri?
Nope. We moved to Houston when I was 10. As a kid, I was in the Boy Scouts before they let girls in. I was the editor of my high school newspaper at San Jacinto High. Then it was off to college at the University of Texas at Austin.
That's where your papers are housed, right?
Oh, no, when I was a student there, one day they'd have 293 linear feet of my personal papers. Cleaned out the whole garage in the shed out back.
What was your major in college?
None, actually. I dropped out after my sophomore year, but I did work on the school paper, the Daily Texan, and joined a fraternity. Also toyed with the idea of becoming an actor, so I performed in a play with a fellow student named Eli Wallach. He showed me I wasn't an actor, and I showed him he wasn't a reporter.
Funny you don't have a Texas accent.
Well, I learned early on that newsmen shouldn't sound like Festus on Gunsmoke. The president Carter met with the prime minister of Japan today, and the two had themselves a rollicking good time discussing world peace thing 60. And that's the way it is.
Good point. Where did you go after college?
Well, I got a job as a sports announcer in Kansas City. My On-air name was Walter Wilcox.
How did that work out?
It was shitty. I switched to news after that, but it was there in Kansas City that I met my wife, Betty.
I hear it was a very good marriage.
And she's buried under me, if that means anything.
And after you got married, you went where?
So, got a job with the United Press International and covered World War II. Went up in a B-17 several times and even got to fire a machine gun at a German fighter jet.
Really?
Not some staged event like Dan Rather in the battlefield with a dry-cleaned uniform or Brian Williams in an imaginary helicopter. What a pair of jerk-offs.
Okay.
Picture Kendall in Army fatigues.
Got it. So you did war coverage and somehow ended up hosting a show called You Are There.
Yes, in 1956, a program where we'd reenact people from our history and culture. Very much like this show. We covered the Civil War, the Great Depression, Prohibition, the signing of the U.S. Constitution, the Boston Tea Party, things like that.
Sounds like quite an effort.
And to keep it accurate, yes. We hired 3 blacklisted screenwriters to write 50 of the show's scripts. I said then, and I'll say it now, if you live honestly, with integrity, with the historical version, and then dramatize it, you are not committing any sin at all.
That show, combined with your early work on the radio for UPI and field coverage on television, led to an offer from the legendary Edward R. Murrow in 1950 to work for CBS.
It certainly did. I initially declined that offer, but Murrow eventually wore me down, and I came to New York, as long as he promised to knock it off with that stupid middle initial. That R drove me crazy. Anyway, I became the evening news anchor in 1962, and just 1 year later told America that JFK had been shot and killed.
You wiped tears away as you did that report and forever entered the heart of the country.
It was awful. I took longer than the other outlets to verify that Kennedy had died, partly because I didn't want to get such an important story wrong, but mainly because I was hoping it wasn't true.
Some say it cemented your reputation for journalistic credibility, one that's still talked about today.
I saw too many people rush to be first, to scoop the competition, only to end up with egg on their face. Nothing worse than a face full of egg.
And you never seemed to offer an opinion on what you were reporting.
And I never will. It would hurt my credibility with the public. Our responsibility is to report the facts as we know them, and let the public weigh their importance.
According to Wikipedia, you were known to the public as Uncle Walter, the average guy, our national security blanket, and the most trusted man in America.
Well, they also called me Old Iron Pants.
Why is that?
Because when I was getting shot at up in that B-15 over Germany, I didn't ship my drawers.
That would do it.
But I'll let you in on a little secret. I told the truth on the air, so I could get away with lying in my personal life, mainly to my wife.
How so?
No, honey, I would never go to a whorehouse. You don't look a day over 40, silly girl. Nobody gives head like you.
I suppose credibility has its advantages.
You bet your ass it does. LBJ once said, if I've lost Cronkite, I've lost Middle America. I'd end every broadcast with the words, and that's the way it is, because that's the way it was.
The Tonight Show host Jack Parr insisted, I don't believe in God, but I believe in Walter Cronkite.
That clown would believe anything. Hey, Jack, the humpback whale can masturbate and drive a Buick at the same time.
Speaking of The Tonight Show, what did you think of Johnny Carson's imitation of you when you announced your retirement in 1981?
Oh, loved it. You did me better than me.
Would you mind taking a few calls from our viewers?
It would be my pleasure.
Zoe from Ossining, New York. Say hello to Walter Cronkite.
Oh, my. Well, hello, Mr. Cronkite.
Hello, Zoe. That's a beautiful name.
Thank you. I wrote a term paper about you in high school a few years ago, and read in your autobiography that you said, and I quote, "I'd like nothing better than to be an Irish bar drunk, making friends with everybody."
That's absolutely true.
So my question is, can you tell us some Irish bar jokes?
Oh, does Dolly Parton sleep on her back? Why don't you iron a four-leaf clover? Because you don't want to press your luck.
Funny.
Why did the Irishman bring a letter to the bar? Because he heard the drinks were on the house.
Makes sense.
One more. Father Murphy walks into a pub in Dublin and says to the first man he meets, "You want to go to heaven?" The man says, "I do, Father." The priest says, "And stand over there against the wall." And the priest asks the second man, "Do you want to go to heaven?" "Certainly, Father," replies the man. "And stand over there against the wall," says the priest. Then Father Murphy walks up to O'Toole and says, "Do you want to go to heaven?" And O'Toole says, "No, I don't, Father." The priest says, "I don't believe this. You mean to tell me that when you die you don't want to go to heaven?" And O'Toole says, "Oh, when I die, yes. I thought you were getting a group together for a trip right now."
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, so getting back to your 19 years as the CBS News anchorman, Tom Shales of the Washington Post wrote that you taught yourself to speak 124 words per minute versus the normal speed of 165 to 200 words per minute.
Well, it was a little trick I figured out early on. Made viewers listen more carefully and hang on my every word.
It was very effective.
But that wasn't my original intent. I developed a slow speech style when explaining to my wife why I was coming home so late. I was drunk, as a skunk, and didn't want to slur my words.
Your wife Betty described you as a frustrated song and dance man.
Though I was the fastest floor man since Cesar Romero. Was also known to do an impromptu striptease at dinner parties. Betty called me a closet stripper and a thwarted cruise director.
A striptease?
Well, I am from Missouri, the show-me state.
True. Perhaps your outgoing personality played a role in your popularity. Throughout the 1970s, you were rated the best-liked figure on television, ahead of Johnny Carson and 4 times more popular than Cher.
I'm pretty much the same person on the air as off, and I'm a good storyteller.
So what was the story about you driving a race car off a 110-foot cliff in the 1950s?
Well, I was at the New York Car Show and bought an Austin Healey on a whim. Had no idea what I was doing. We were in the Great Smoky Mountains in Tennessee and started at the top and raced to the bottom. Needless to say, I got there first.
You certainly did.
Actually splashed down in Lake Ocoee. My back still hurts just talking about it.
And you also had a boat that you crashed into the rocks off Martha's Vineyard.
Are we on This Is Your Life? Not sure who your sources are, but you're deadly accurate. Another impulse purchase. Betty and I were at a boat show in North Carolina, and I saw a nice west sail, 42-foot yawl, and wrote the guy a check on the spot. From that point on, I was Captain Walter.
You don't believe in shopping around?
Well, I had a little too much single malt scotch that day and made an unplanned visit to Plymouth Rock. Had to wait 4 hours until the tide rolled in. By that time, I was drunk and had fallen asleep in the cabin and woke up in a puddle of my own making, if you get my drift. Not one of my better days.
Would you mind speaking with a journalism student?
I'm here to serve.
We have Harrison from the Arizona State University Walter Cronkite School of Journalism on the line.
Oh, knock me over with a feather.
Mr.
Thank you.
Cronkite, this is such an honor to be speaking with the man that my school is named after.
Oh, I have tears in my eyes. I'm flattered. What can I do for you, young man?
I have 2 questions. One about the past, one in the present.
A now and then inquiry.
Yes, sir. How did the news differ from today back when you were on the air?
First off, we had no video when I began. We had to develop film of news coverage, so news was rarely instant unless it was a feed through our own cable from Washington or purchased via cable or satellite for a really big story.
And news wasn't available 24/7.
Nope. Our program was 27 minutes. 24 of it for news and 3 minutes for Eric Severeid to blow off his load.
And much of that was reports from correspondents, right?
Affirmative. About 13 minutes. So I was actually on the air 14 minutes each night. Yet critics called me an air hog. You know, Harrison, I've always felt we were really just a headline service. I wish people didn't rely on us so heavily. But hell, I was seen on 200 stations and getting $300,000 a year with 3 months off.
And you have a great journalism school named after you.
Indeed I do. I hope your parents aren't getting hosed too much on the tuition.
The second part of my question is, what do you think of reporters having medical procedures live on the air, like Katie Couric having a colonoscopy?
It's disgusting. Inappropriate, completely unprofessional. Has nothing whatsoever to do with journalism, and I love every second of it. My only criticism is they don't do it enough. The camera in the ass is a good start, don't misunderstand me, but I want to see some mammograms and pap smears, for God's sake.
In a similar vein, for lack of a better word, what did you think of the journalist who got caught masturbating on a Zoom call during a story conference?
Loved it. I suppose you could say he was multitasking. What was going through that guy's mind? I'm sure the people on that conference call are wondering to this day which one of them he was focused on.
And yet they didn't fire him. He was back on the air, at least for a while. What would you say to that guy?
Step away from the vehicle and keep your hands where I can see them. Seriously, any guy caught playing with himself on a conference call should do the right thing and jump out the nearest window.
Our next caller is Abby, a librarian from Philadelphia. What's your question for Walter Cronkite?
Good day to you, sir. I'm wondering who your favorite person was that you interviewed and why.
Well, that's an excellent question, Abby. And for the record, I think librarians have a sex appeal like no other.
That's what my ex-husband said before he cheated on me with a guy.
Okay, well now, in answer to your question, in 1962, I interviewed a puppet named Charlemagne, a stuffed lion who would give all sorts of crazy answers to my questions. He would offer his opinion on just about anything, and I got to cheers what he said. I really loved it. I reported facts. Puppets could express opinions. The folks who call themselves reporters today all remind me of Charlemagne.
Seriously, Mr. Cronkite, why do you think people welcomed being interviewed by you?
I was honest and low-key. The most important thing in doing an interview is to get the subject to relax. Trust takes time, and I was in no hurry. Slowly but surely, the guests would relax and let their guard down and open up, unlike Mike Wallace, who pounded a guy's front door and plunged a Sennheiser mic in his spinter with no grease.
Weren't you known to show up unannounced from time to time?
That I was. If I found myself in a particular town and read in the local paper that a person was getting married, or there was a high school graduation or a church event, I'd pop in for a quick hello. I've been to dance recitals, bar mitzvahs, and you name it.
Why were you considered the gold standard for journalism?
It's simple. I was in no hurry for a scoop. I did extensive research at my desk and wouldn't report anything unless I knew it to be true. In my 44 years in television broadcasting, I never offered my opinion. What's reported today are made-up stories based upon selected facts. Let me put it this way. If you happen to witness an event, say it's a car accident or a robbery, then turn on your TV and flip the channels amongst the various news programs, you'll see very different versions of the event you just witnessed. That's not reporting. That's propaganda.
You wrote in your autobiography, A Reporter's Life, that objective journalism and an opinion column are about as similar as the Bible and Playboy magazine, and that a journalist covering politics must remain unbiased in their reporting. that it's one of the fundamentals of good journalism, and that real journalism is what we need to make democracy work.
And look where it got me. I'm revered by all the fake journalists. What a bunch of hypocrites. You'd think they'd miss my pretty little face.
Well, on behalf of our viewers, we certainly do. I'm surprised you never got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Oh, because I'm a journalist, not an actor. Mike Wallace and Chet Huntley and Anderson Cooper and Edward R. Murrow have stars. That was their prerogative, but it's not right. I did, however, accept the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1981. Jimmy Carter kissed me on both cheeks, right out of The Godfather.
Well, you were the most famous and admired broadcast journalist in the world, so that's kind of like a godfather.
You make a good point.
And didn't the FBI keep a file on you?
The FBI kept a file on everybody. But when I asked to see mine, they said it had been destroyed.
I can't begin to tell you how much we appreciate your taking the time to speak with us. Do you have any final words for our viewers?
Well, as a matter of fact, I do. I know it's been a while, but it'd be too much to ask if I took us out, so to speak.
It would be my honor.
Hello again. This is Walter Cronkite. Back in the more familiar battleground of Washington, we'd like to sum up our findings in Ukraine. Findings that must be speculative, personal, and, like a Kamala Harris press conference, probably a little confusing. Who's winning? Who's losing? Well, that depends on who you ask. The U.S. seems to be winning in the sending aid Olympics, but I wouldn't put Russia down for the count just yet. Kamala Harris is still laughing, which may or may not be a sign of progress. And Donald Trump? He's probably already written his victory tweet. For a war he's not actually involved in. On the horizon, we're looking at another standoff. Picture this. Kamala nervously giggling in the Situation Room while trying to explain the difference between a ceasefire and a timeout. Across the table, Trump, now freshly self-appointed Secretary of Everything, interrupts with, "Back in my day, we didn't have standoffs. We had showdowns. Big, beautiful showdowns, and everybody won. Mostly me. Ukraine might hold on. It might not. Too often, we've been disappointed by the optimism of American leaders. I mean, every time Kamala says we're on the right track, it's hard not to wonder if she's actually talking about a favorite Amtrak route. Meanwhile, Trump is busy planning the most tremendous peace summit at Mar-a-Lago, of course, where he'll broker a deal between Ukraine, Russia, and a buffet table. It'll be tremendous, believe me. No one negotiates deals like Trump. Unless, of course, you count the time Kamala negotiated her way through an interview about AI. It's rumored the Russians have finally realized they can't win a long war of attrition. Maybe someone sent Putin a Kamala soundbite, or maybe he turned into Trump's podcast, where Trump confidently declared, "This war could end it by next week, easy. It's a couple of phone calls, boom, done. They'd all be thanking me, the Ukrainians, the Russians, the Democrats, tremendous." If the Russians expect to improve their position at the negotiating table, we might finally understand something important. Negotiations mean dialogue. Actual, coherent dialogue. Not whatever happens when Kamala starts using big words and Trump interrupts with wrong. And it seems more certain than ever that the bloody mess in Ukraine will end in, you guessed it, a stalemate. The standoff as inevitable as Trump denying the results of any future negotiations he didn't personally oversee. Either we'll witness real diplomacy, though at this point that's about as likely as Kamala delivering a speech without at least 5 awkward laughs, or Trump being invited to the White House Christmas party. Each round of "we'll send more aid" versus "we'll just keep bombing" brings us closer to a kind of cosmic comedy. Imagine Kamala saying, "We've got this," while fumbling with a map of Eastern Europe, and Trump launching his latest great idea to end the war by turning the Donbass into a new Trump resort and golf course. It's a kind of international incident that you would expect from a sitcom, except it's real life. And unfortunately, it's still happening. To say we're closer to victory today is like believing Kamala when she says she's been to the border. To suggest we're on the edge of defeat is to follow Trump down the rabbit hole of hyperbole and Mar-a-Lago menu recommendations. But to say we're mired in a stalemate, now that's the truth. A stalemate spiced up with Kamala's non-answers and Trump's endless winning catchphrases, all while the world collectively sighs and wonders how we got here. In the end, this reporter must conclude that the only way out is to negotiate. Not as winners, not as the greatest deal makers of all time, sorry, Donald, but as people who tried their best. Maybe one day, we'll all look back on this as the time Kamala finally got a joke to land and Trump found a war he couldn't tweet his way out of. Until then, we can only hope for peace, or at least for someone to hit the mute button on the press conferences. And that's the way it is on this bright and sunny day. Thank you all for tuning in. This is Walter Cronkite. I'll see you again soon on the next episode of Over My Dead Body.
We hope you enjoyed the 11th episode of Over My Dead Body. The entire TV series is now available as a podcast in addition to streaming on Amazon Prime. Aside from Walter Cronkite, we've interviewed Robert Kardashian, Nostradamus, Steve Jobs, Mae West, Richard Nixon, Julia Child, Tupac Shakur, Phyllis Diller, Mark Twain, and Howard Cosell. Upcoming guests include Jimmy Stewart, Dr. Sigmund Freud, Jack Lemmon, Lucille Ball, Jimmy Durante, and Dr. Ruth Westheimer. All told, we plan to produce 60 episodes and perhaps as many as 300 of them. One thing's for certain, there's no shortage of interesting guests and more seem to arrive every day. I'm Stephen Kunis and I created Over My Dead Body, serve as the executive producer, and research and write each episode. Walter Cronkite was portrayed by Frank Gerard, a man of many talents and voices. Our wonderfully spooky theme music was composed by Marty Krizwanis. Very special thanks go to Norman Lear for his encouragement in the development of this show, and to the late, great Johnny Carson for suggesting that a talk show with a fantasy guest list would be a wonderful idea.